Okay, we're going to focus now on the customer perspective and neurodiversity. Now, good general customer service and thoughtful ways of doing things, whether that be physical environment, or it could be processes, it could be the staff training, that will help everybody, not just the neurodivergent. If you have, for example, steps within a retail environment, although not as common these days, what other barriers are there for a person with dyspraxia who has difficulty with their movement? I mean, in a retail environment, there's the fine motor skills, picking things up, handling them across at the till. Also, the lighting in a store needs to be bright to help the 173,000 of the UK population registered as partially sighted. And long may that help continue. But there needs to be a balance between helping people see to purchase, avoid trip hazards. But there's also due consideration needed for sensory overload. Now, people with dyslexia and dyscalculia in particular may miss a special offer, and so point of sales need to help rather than cause confusion. Tell people what they're actually getting rather than forcing them to do equations, especially when the light's bright and you can't concentrate either. Again, these are getting a lot better these days, but there are a few ones out there. But buy one, get one free, or another free. And if you stand on one leg, very difficult to understand sometimes. And also difficult to process if you've got autism as well sometimes. The location of your retail outlet will make a massive difference as to whether a person with a neurodivergent customer condition visits. And of course, makes a valuable purchase. Now, the noisier and busier an environment will put off visits, as well having to walk through busy car parks, which are very difficult if you've got ADHD or autism spectrum disorder. Even more complicated if you've got both, which I have and many others have. It's essential for your neurodivergent customers too that your staff are aware of the conditions, and so they can amend their approach accordingly to ensure that the neurodiverse customer is able to have an inclusive, positive experience. Now, knowledge, that can include things like the behaviours associated with a condition, as well as how the staff member can negatively and positively affect the experience of that customer. When having conversations, the intonation of the sales pitch or conversation is where consideration needs to take place, which is where do you put the emphasis and comma, etc. within your sentence. Also, you need to think about 55% of disabled people are unemployed. So people who are disabled, and they earn a lot less, people who are disabled are much likely to be in poverty than those without a disability. And so the number of trips made into your store is a truly special occasion. So just bear that in mind. We don't go that often, so it needs to be a special environment. So, and also, because of the conditions, the customer by this point may have received a sensory overload and be really anxious. We also need to be careful of the consideration of where neurodiverse customers spend their money. And so pushy salespeople are not a desirable part of the experience for anybody with or without a condition, but especially with, for example, if you've got ADHD, they're more likely to spend money they don't have, or impulsive, and will regret the decision after. And also, if you've got a condition where you've miscalculated, or you trust the person and go, yeah, that's a good deal, I'll take it, and turns out it's not. So allow customers who have miscalculated or misunderstood to return their goods, as long as they're in store condition, even if they're out of time. Why not? It's a good thing to do. Call centres need to be aware too that people with ADHD are problem solvers and get frustrated when told no, especially when they can see a solution. It's not that we don't like no, it's just that, hang on, there's a solution here. Why are you not applying that solution? Those with autistic spectrum disorder have their own set of rules, which then, when the call handler deviates from, we then become frustrated. So the call centre, the call handler needs to be very patient and allow that customer to just repeat themselves. Accept it's going to be a longer call. When call handlers keep interrupting the neurodiverse caller, the caller loses track of what they want to say and becomes very frustrated and angry, and then the call handler cuts them off. And we're no further forward other than the call centre's hat made a customer angry, and we've not really solved the problem. The main point of a call centre is to solve the caller's difficulty, not add to it. Okay, we're going to move on to reasonable adjustments for neurodivergent customers. Of course, there's lots, and I'll present a few here, but obviously there's lots more, but it gives you an idea to think about. Relating to sensory difficulties, each penetrating noise, smell, temperature, it creates even more psychological distress. And we don't have an on and off button. It's like it's there and it's causing a difficulty. And also, so rather than have, say, modern music, I don't know what that is, just think about what's acoustically pleasing. Again, the temperature of your store should not be too cold or too warm, as this is bad for physiological health as well as distressing for neurodivergent people. Now, I've found this, some stores now have delis at the front, which visually that's great and it's great convenience. I can just quickly go dump, done. But depending, how often you clean, when the oven has that burnt smell or sometimes the food smells, they can be quite distressing. Now, process time for returning goods, I've briefly touched on that. Because of social anxiety, a neurodivergent customer may not return to store or make a call within the terms of the agreement. So, there needs to be discretion and flexibility. So, exchange the goods as you would otherwise. It's partly as well because within the store, the layout may be difficult to navigate, might be noisy and busy, and this will also restrict the opportunities for returning goods. Even though from day one it's been the full intention to do that, it's just not possible. We went to communication adjustments. A person, for example, with autism spectrum disorder may appear abrupt or rude when they don't mean to be. It's just the way sometimes that we speak. And also ADHD, people are problem solvers, and we're just trying to solve the problem of need. That's what you do in your shop. You're solving a problem of need. Colleagues need to ensure they understand this and therefore not become upset with this misinterpretation, which is what it is, of a neurodivergent condition. Now, throughout your store, you can have symbols and different colour-coded things for communication to help customers that where reading is difficult. Moving on to tills. These can be overwhelming for many with autistic spectrum disorder and also difficult for those with dyscalculia, where you've got to do a calculation, dyslexia, where you've got to read, and other neurodivergent conditions. So it's highly advisable to have colleagues on hand to process the goods and help with payment for these customers at self-service units. Now, more so throughout 2020 and into 2021, but queuing is very difficult for people with ADHD and autism. So a till should be open to assist these people and give an enhanced experience so we don't have to queue. Allow these people with ADHD and autism to queue jump to avoid that psychological distress. When having to queue outside as well and in a car park, this heightens an already psychologically distressing situation for people with ADHD and autism spectrum disorder. And so an alternative must be offered to avoid discrimination. Treating everybody the same is not equality. It's all about equality of opportunity. Do not put people at a detriment. How do we make a purchase? And dyscalculia makes it extremely difficult to ascertain whether or not to make a purchase based on the budget. So it's important to have extremely clear labelling, as well as colleagues on hand, that can assist, such as a personal shopper. Store layouts, again, not as much these days, but there are still quite a few out there, are often confusing, and so maps will help, but not just in text format. Remember the call centres, I've briefly touched on them, but when you have to make a call, choosing numbers when dialing in is difficult, and the social anxiety is exacerbated when the call handler fails to correctly move the caller forward. Telling a person with ADHD what you can't do is a stress ignition, and with autism, the call handler needs to ensure that they are more flexible with abrupt language. If they're calm, the caller will be. And also, manager callbacks need to be immediate, or at very least within the hour. We can't move on whilst we're still waiting for that thing. It's within it's like a computer virus. We can't move on until it's dealt with. So if it's going to be 2 days, my life's on hold until that simple matter's dealt with. Okay, what about best practice in customer service? Now, self-service checkouts can be overwhelming for neurodivergent customers. And so a human being should be on hand to manage or support the checkout process, or otherwise assist. Staff nearby, of course, are quite helpful, but they have the potential somewhere between hovering over the customer and aloof. So getting the balance right isn't always easy, but it needs to be aware of. Constantly changing the layout, even in minor ways, can cause distress and confusion to neurodiverse customers. And notice should be given where possible, but also changes should be minimal. And just gradually increase them where you have to. Tell people where you have moved things to. Don't assume they will know. It's very frustrating when something's moved and you can't find it. Signage in the store needs to be clear and, of course, consistent and follow a particular theme and order, as well as getting to the store in, for example, a shopping centre. It's advisable and extremely useful to offer colour-coded maps of the store layout. This is true as well of retail outlets, such as the Metro Centre. It used to be very easy to navigate when colour-coded and signage told you where you were. All zones now look the same, and it causes confusion and distress when navigating. And I'm not too bad on navigation, but trying to navigate is very difficult in there. And they all look the same as well. They're all owned by one company now. There needs to be clear differentiation between products too within store and sections, and ensure that from a distance the store doesn't look cluttered, because this would cause stress and anxiety to a neurodiverse customer. Waiting times at the till, briefly touched on this as well as call centres, need to be shorter for callers and shoppers with ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, because they struggle to queue without anxiety. Quite a useful thing to have a special till or a dedicated line for people with these difficulties. Should help satisfy this element of the Equality Act, including immediate callbacks from a manager in a call centre. Customers with neurodivergent conditions, again, such as ADHD or autism spectrum disorder, will be less likely to visit during peak hours. So you need to be open to ensure quiet times, and of course when public transport is available, because many people who are neurodiverse rely on public transport, and it's better for the environment. Make sure you add the busy and quiet peak and off-peak times to your website for each store, not just generally, as well as printed in store as well. Many neurodiverse people also have epilepsy, and where this is not under control, there is a heavy reliance on public transport. I briefly touched on that there. So with this in mind, Also add the bus, train and walking information to the store, website, and of course in store. Again, this will add to your environmental credentials by encouraging use of public transport. Now, additional stress and anxiety may induce an epileptic seizure. So we need to reduce that stress and anxiety as much as we can, because many people with neurodiverse also have epilepsy. A club for shoppers will allow you to hold special events and be inclusive, and it reduces that stress. This could include particular hours, such as the autism hour that some retailers run, but a more wider application. Now, you can have a personal shopper with these as well, just to help people, or a mentor. Now, to promote these initiatives, you need to seek out, of course, local organisations for people with those conditions, local and national press, and of course, social media, not forgetting in-store. Why not offer in your store an oasis of tranquility? And that could include relaxing music, furniture to help with the calming down when in a stressful retail environment. When contacting a call centre, always allow a neurodivergent caller to speak direct to a person without having to press all the numbers. It's very frustrating, and sometimes, depending on the condition, it's difficult to do. Colleagues in contact with customers need to be patient and allow that customer or caller to repeat themselves and take their time. Thank you for watching. I'm very grateful for your time. This is one of a series of videos. Please enjoy them all.